We are live. Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning into the Banff Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lafferty. I'm here today with a bunch of great guys to talk about pop culture, geeky stuff, games. Below me in the Brady Bunch grid is Mr. Chris Dean. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Right. And Chris, you are probably best well known for a game called I Love the Core from a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
And most recently, you did a superhero RPG with drawing as the resolution mechanism called It's a Plane.
That is correct, and I was on here about it last year as well. So
yeah, indeed. Good to have you back. Thank
you.
In the upper right-hand corner, we have Owen Stevens, who has been on the Bun Podcast before.
Hi, folks.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Just saying hi.
Hey. Owen's done a ton of stuff, including most recently Starfinder. So good to have you back, Owen.
Thank you very much.
Hope life isn't too frigid there in the American Midwest.
We had a pretty impressive snowstorm, which I actually took video of, but I have not yet posted that video because it's from the car, and the people in the car have not yet approved their conversation about the snowstorm getting posted. So no one else may ever get to see it. But it was very much looking at going into hyperspace with all the snowflakes headed straight for us.
Yeah, I understand. We get that occasionally here in Colorado too. So, and last but not least, in our lower hand corner is Jacob Blackman. How you doing, Jacob?
Hello, doing very well. Thank you for having me again.
All right. So, as I said before, in our pregame, usually we do pop culture chatter, and then we move over to talk about games and stuff. This time we're going to switch it up because I'm squirrely like that, and let's just jump straight into talking about our projects, and then we'll talk about the Mandalorian and whatnot afterwards. So, Owen, you have a cool new project that you're really excited about. Can you give us the skinny on that?
Absolutely. So I am just recently have launched what I'm calling the 52 and 52 pre-order and bonus mega bundle. The project is that I'm going to be releasing a product a week every week for the year of 2020. So starting in the first week, there will be a new project, and then there will be one every week thereafter. And we are taking a pre-order for all of those. So people can, at one price, buy in, and they will get all 52 products. And every one of those products will be released in 4 different versions, one each for Pathfinder First Edition, Pathfinder Second Edition, Starfinder, and 5e. And that's currently over at the Open Gaming Store. If you go to opengamingstore.com, it's on the front page. You can click on it. Also, I'm sure there will be links. And for the pre-order period, which will run at least through the end of the year, if you buy the pre-order, we will also give you a bonus mega bundle, which has 500 PDFs in it. And that whole kit and caboodle is currently $29.95. After the pre-order period, you wouldn't get the mega bundle anymore, and buying into the 52 products will run you $49.95.
Wow, so it's the mind boggles. What's in those 500 PDFs? That's a lot of gaming.
So we have a list of what they all are and what their due dates are, and a lot of the covers, not all the covers yet. But we're hitting a bunch of different themes. Part of the idea is to have a lot of different content for a lot of different gamers. So, for example, I've got Armored Aces, which is my rules for both personal mecha and having entire mecha-focused campaign. And yes, even for things like 5e, the apparatus of Qualsh, for example, is basically just a mecha. So there's plenty of space in those games for mech-related themes and items. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing 4 different versions of each of these instead of just cramming a bunch of stats into one thing. We've got what we are currently calling TSM, which is Teens Solving Mysteries, which is a campaign set. If you want to take one of those game systems and use it for a campaign that focuses on teen characters solving mysteries. We've got Dream Magic and Hellblood Magic and a Runecaster class. We're trying to hit a very broad base of things.
That's more Buffy than Scooby, right?
What?
That's more Buffy than Scooby, right?
We want you to be able to do both.
Okay.
So the same month that we're doing Team Solving Mysteries, we're going to be releasing BAMF, which is rules for non-lethal conflict resolution.
Okay.
So that you can run a game, say, in Starfinder, where instead of having to necessarily shoot things, all the mechanics are to try and figure out what something is, and if you lose a scene, instead of dying, you run away. So that would be very much a Scooby, Jabberjaw kind of end of things. We even have Rutro, which is rules for talking animals as player companions. So those are all modules that are coming out in the same month. If you want to do Buffy and you don't want to include non-lethal conflict resolution, you don't want to include talking animals, then you just don't use those products. But by having all of those products put together, you can pick and choose what you want to put together for what works for your game. And that is the other advantage of us doing all 52 of these as one bundle, one product. You buy in for the whole 52, and then you can take the pieces that make sense for any specific game or campaign you want to play. We've got a Adventure Academy, for example. You could combine Adventure Academy, which is about young adventurers learning how to be adventurers. You could combine that with Teen Solving Mysteries, and you essentially get Harry Potter. Or you could take Adventure Academy and combine it with Magic Girls, and you essentially get, My Hero Academia. There are ways that you can take these different pieces and put them together to get the game you want to play, and we want those pieces to be available for a range of systems.
So I can put together Magic Girls and Retro and get that Scooby-Doo I Dream of Jeannie crossover that I've been wanting since I was like 7.
You can 100% do that.
All right, perfect.
I would play that game.
I would play that game a lot. Cool. Well, that is awesome. And we got the URL up right now, and we have the link in the comments, and we'll put it in the show notes too. 52 and 52. I gotta think you're gonna be promoting this throughout the year as new content comes up.
Yeah, one of the nice things about the way this project is set up is that every week I will be able to say, hey, the 52 and 52 project now has this available, now has this available. So I will be able to point at it as time goes on and keep driving sales for people that haven't bought in yet. One of the hardest things to do as an independent creative is get eyes on your project. And having to drive people to 52 different projects means that pardon me, if I miss them once, that's a product they don't know exists. One of the parts of this experiment is to have a whole year worth of products that you buy into at once. My hope is that I will be able to reach a larger and larger and larger audience for this one buy-in point.
Okay. Just one more time for folks in the back. This is going to be Pathfinder.
Pathfinder First Edition, Pathfinder Second Edition, Starfinder, and 5e.
Ooh, okay, you're hitting all the heavy hitters there, all the 500-pound gorillas.
Well, that's part of the idea, and it's a little of a weird time for me because I'm now the Fantasy Age developer over at Green Renine.
I wasn't going to mention that, but that's cool.
Well, Fantasy Age is a great game system, and I might well take some of these things and start patching them into Fantasy Age products. But right now, any work I do on Fantasy Age is for Green Renine rather than for myself, and we have not yet put out the community use rules to allow other people to publish stuff for Fantasy Age yet. So I can't make that part of this project. But there are possibilities that, especially the most popular parts of these, might be adapted to yet more game systems as time goes on. I've already had people come to me and say, hey, I would really love to have this for Savage Worlds, or I would really love to have this for Cortex. And where there are ways to do those systems, if this is popular enough, I might either do the conversion work, or I might bring on another designer developer and say, hey, here's what we did. How do we do the best version of that for this other game system? Because I don't want to just take the same paragraph and then change the stat block at the bottom. And sometimes that'll be fine, right? If I have an undead monster that shoots fire out of its eyes, that works fine in all 4 of those game systems. You just need the different rules. But there are going to be cases where they handle things differently thematically. That's actually one of the reasons why on my blog at the moment, OwenCaseyStevens.com, I've been taking feats from first edition Pathfinder that don't yet exist in Starfinder and walking people through my process of converting them to Starfinder, so I can talk about where the game mechanics don't work, or where there needs to be thematic change, or where the math is different in ways that aren't obvious on the surface, so that I can show people how that kind of conversion process works.
Okay, cool. This sounds like a lot of fun. So that's OwenCaseyStevens.com.
That's the blog, yes, sir.
Okay, let me go ahead and share that out just so people can see what we're talking about.
I'm just kind of curious how much of this, the 52 and 52, have you started already, and are you getting a nice, backlog started before you release all of these?
So there's a whole lot of work that goes into a product. We've got at least draft covers for much more than half. I think like 3/4 of them we currently have draft covers, and getting art and a layout and a graphic design, especially since we want all 4 game systems to look slightly different. We've got a button on each that tells you what game system it is and a color branding. And in some cases, we have different covers for different game systems because sometimes we were like, no, that works for a fantasy version, but we really want something different for Starfinder. We've outlined all of them. We've conceptualized all of them. We're going to be releasing soon a PDF catalog that will show you what all of them are going to be with a little one-sentence description. And then I have started writing on all of the ones due in January and some of the more complex ones in the future. None of those are done yet, but yes, very much so. One of the things that I need to do is make sure that I stay ahead of the schedule. And one of the skill sets that I picked up when I was working at Paizo, working for the Player Companion line, was working on multiple things at once. Because with Player Companion, a product came out every month, which meant I always had to outline the product that comes out in 7 months and do the cover art for the one that comes out in 6 months and send out to freelancers the one that comes out in 5 months and do the interior art for the one that comes out in 4 months and develop the text that I just got in for the one that comes out in 3 months, work on blog posts for the ones that come out in 2 months. That was all 1 month's work. So I was never just working on one project a month. And that kind of cascading scheduling is what I'm going to have to do to make this work. But I did a product a week every week for 4 years with Super Genius and then Rogue Genius Games. So I know what that workload's like. And at the time, I was doing that while full-time freelancing and for a while holding down a separate full-time job and for a while doing Dungeon a Day. So I know the size of that workload. And as a full-time independent game designer, I can put the hours I need on Green Ronin. I can put the hours I need for Rogue Genius Games to keep moving forward. And then the rest of the time will go towards this. The other nice thing about it, pardon me, just a minute, folks. The other nice thing about it is that I've mentioned as a freelancer, you frequently don't get vacation time. I know what projects are due when. So if come November, I have everything done through the end of the year, I can actually say to myself, okay, I've earned 2 weeks of vacation time. Or if over the summer in July, or August, we're looking at conventions and I'm like, okay, well, I'm all set through September. I will know that vacation time is appropriate and blocked out. Whereas if I'm only a week ahead, I know, well, this is not a time I can take a break.
Kind of like being a web comic guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's in anyone that has done a thing that comes out multiple times a week or every week or multiple times a month, they know that workflow is merciless, but it's also manageable. You schedule it, you keep track of where everything is, and when I'm done writing things, right, someone has to edit it, someone has to do layout. So there's a series of steps for each one of these. I just have to make sure that the entire pipeline of labor stays ahead. And that's one of the reasons why the pre-order is coming out in early November for something that is not going to launch until January, because we know now, okay, we've got enough of this work gone forward. We can be confident that week one on that first due date, that first project will be out.
Okay, cool. Well, hopefully we can have you on a bunch more times to talk about this as time goes on.
Anytime. Always happy to be here.
Cool. Switching gears, Chris, thanks for being patient, sir.
That's all right, no problem. I was quite enjoying that. There was actually quite a lot of pro tips there. So, yeah.
Owen is always good for the professional perspective. I love this art from your book, and I'd just like to put this up whenever I get a chance.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a lovely cover.
It is. That's great.
Yeah, that's the work of James Habel, who did my covers for I Love Decor as well, and he's basically on board for like whatever game that I do. He has been fantastic because I got the impression he did a lot like higher paying stuff than what I was able to like pay him with I Love Decor, and I try and pay him like a little more every time I work with him. So I'm currently working on a game called Die by the Sword, which he's done the cover for as well. And yeah, he basically has said from day one that he likes doing my games. I mean, yeah, he gets money out of it, and I'll do my best to pay him what I can. But like, it very much initially came from being very interested in the ideas and just like, you know, I think he just likes my weird outlandish ideas and trying to portray them on screen. So yeah. So I'm glad you like it. I do have some issues with the cover just because some people kind of get slightly confused as to what's going on. Some people are like, oh, it's a fashionable special. I was like, no, it's a giant robot picking up a criminal. But, you know, if you want it to be a fashionable special, that's also fine.
That was actually my first thought when I saw that was...
Yeah. I can entirely see it. And it's one of those ones where I've just learned a lesson with art direction. So on my newest cover is done, I was like relentless at like the very early stages of even with the early sketches. I'm just going to remind you that this needs to be in there, and this needs to be in there, this needs to be in there, and yeah. But yeah, it's a great cover either way. But it's all part of learning lessons and stuff.
And just to cover all the bases, you mentioned I Love the Core, which was kind of your
Yep.
well, how would you describe that? Sort of an homage to Aliens?
Okay, so it is a kind of a mashup of Aliens, Predator, Starship Troopers, and Dog Soldiers. If you put Dog Soldiers in space, those are probably my most formative influences. It's basically about squaddies in a horror situation where I think most role-playing games are kind of generally in horror considered to be powerless. Meanwhile, in other decor, it's kind of like the other way around. You're an utter badass, and if there's stuff that can scare you and kill you, then you should be afraid, and that's kind of like the point of the game. So you can do alien style swarm fighting, or you can do like Event Horizon style. No, you can't fight that thing. It's got no physical stats and will just make you insane by looking at it. So you can do a variety of kind of horror with it, but it's also kind of got a bit of action orientation. I'm very much all about cinematics in my writing, so I think my games I've done since have become even more so than this. But this was very much the kind of like building blocks of me deciding how I want to design games, really. And I'm very proud of it. But my future games are probably a little bit less crunchy than this one, but it's still got about the right balance between cinematics and some crunch.
All right, cool. Well, hey, now that we have established your credentials, let's talk about you have a special project right now in which you are, like a lot of people do Inktober or do write a novel in a month. You're doing Rolevember, which is...
Yep. Okay. So Rolevember is basically conceptually like NaNoWriMo. In fact, it came from NaNoWriMo. So I used to do NaNoWriMo, and then I found I could never finish any kind of novel or short story I wrote. I kind of got into RPG design more seriously because I found it was stuff I could actually finish. Like the story, I could never get to the end. But like with RPGs, that's like the mode of me providing people the tools to make their own story, which apparently it turns out I'm much better at, like in terms of an actual finished product. So with I Love the Core, this was a game that I homebrewed at like uni, and it had like about 10 years of history of just people randomly inviting me to come run the game in various places across the UK and even in Canada. I think it was a NaNoWriMo. I decided, instead of writing a novel, I'm going to finish that damn game. I intensely, from the 1st of November right to the end of November, every day worked on the thing, several hours a day, and I had a practically testable new version. It would have been testable before, but this was like overhauled massively. And 2 months later, I ran a game that went really well. And then from then on, I was like running games of it probably a few times, like every week consistently. And then I did the Kickstarter for it about a year later, I think. And when I was doing my I Love the Core Kickstarter, I got to November and I had nothing to do because this is the first time I've run a Kickstarter and dealt with loads of freelance artists, and the artists were just not giving me anything. And I didn't really have anything else to do. So in order to not stress, fortunately I had plenty of time for this Kickstarter. Like I gave myself a year, and this was in month 1 or 2. So I did stress later, but at the time it wasn't too bad. So I started working on Is It a Plane, which I then do the following year. And then last year, when I was in the final stages of Is It a Plane, got to November, I was waiting on my print proofs and stuff from Drive Through RPGs. So again, didn't have a whole lot to do. So I therefore went, I'll start on the next game. Last year, I tried to get other people involved in the idea of, hey, it's November, design games with me, but it didn't work at all. So this year I tried it again, and still not like a massive amount of people, but like I have an actual decent core of people that are like really enthusiastically engaging with it. And it's still very small and tiny, but like I'm in mind it's like year 1, so hopefully it'll grow as like an idea. Now the other thing is, as you can see on the page, there's also a link to Nagademon, which is National Game Design Month. Now I posted about Rolevember online, and I had several people go, why don't you just do Nagademon, in a slightly kind of seemed to me quite defensive way. And I went, because I've genuinely been doing my own Rolevember for years and years and years as just a personal motivational thing. I wanted to spread the motivational thing to others. I also know a lot of people who want to get into RPGs, and they're constantly asking me, Chris, can you do a game for me? Will you do a game with me? And I'm kind of like, can I kind of get out more than 2 games before I get into like making games for other people? So I kind of created Rolevember to kind of go with that idea. It's like, okay, if people want me to do games with them, how about I facilitate other people that maybe design games that can be there to give them advice and stuff when I'm maybe too busy doing stuff. So we've got a decent balance on the group. And with Nagademon, I've kind of like teamed up with them. So they've got a much larger amount of people, but they're focused on game design of all kinds, so card games, video games, that kind of thing. There are RPG guys on there as well. So some of the RPG guys have joined Rolevember and they share on both. And we've just got a bit of a happy sort of like, do it however you like. I mean, there's loads of other, people using November for like creativity, basically. So this is my thing. So the goal I've given people is to decide on what they want to do. It doesn't have to be a game. It can be a setting. It can be just some material they want to develop for a game that they like. It can be a game they want to publish. It can be a game they want to do for fun. It can be, again, supplements for games that they enjoy. It can also just be giving yourself GMing goals. So I have got like 3 of the group are people who are literally just trying to improve their own GMing skills. One guy, he barely GMs at all, and he came along to like an in-person meet we had, and we, gave him lots of pointers and stuff. He then generally has tons and tons of ideas, but he never manages to like execute them, which I, get with a lot of people. The main reason why I design games is because I could never ever get into games at uni or games that would last more than 2 or 3 games. So I ended up just making my own and making games I wanted to play. So it's kind of looking at people that were like me a few years ago and trying to help encourage them along. And some people, are just in it just for the GMing fun. One of them is one of my playtesters, so he's on Die by the Sword. He's my only GM playtester at the moment, so he's using it so he can do a playtesting campaign for me. Got another guy who's taking I Love the Core and is converting it to his series of books that he publishes on Amazon. I've got another Amazon author who's doing a mashup RPG thing. And there's lots of like old school established game designers doing their own thing as well. And it's just a nice little kind of community of people giving each other pointers and that kind of thing in just various levels. And yeah, so that's what it's about, really.
So I've posted the Facebook link in the comments. It'll be in the show notes. Let's say I'm a listener or viewer right now, and I'm like, God damn, that's for me. I want to find that. I go to Facebook. I just search for Rolevember, and that's the way to find you, right?
Indeed, yes.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully next year I'll have more than that, but again, it was like a kind of last minute sort of thing. Well, I knew I was going to do a new game in November, but I hadn't actually decided what it was. So it became last year. I got a bunch of people on my Psychic Cactus Games community page. So Psychic Cactus Games be me publishing games, and I got them to vote on what my next game was because I have so many game ideas. I can't play favorites. I could easily do any of them. So I did that again this year. So I got people to vote, and therefore I'm creating Code Straight to Hell, which is a cyberpunk / cosmic horror in space. So that's fun. I'm basically blending the Matrix with a bit of Altered Carbon and quite a bit of Lovecraft and mash them. That's like the most basic way to describe it. So I've got a project I'm doing as well, and kind of egging other people on.
All right. Sounds a bit like Charlie Strauss.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main thing is it's also good for people to see me as the guy who created the project having a day. I mean, I haven't done very much today. It's okay. Sometimes you can. I've written 5. I have spent half an hour about this fine. So yeah, and we've got people who post every day. People who post every few days. I'm trying not to be too strict about it, but the idea is just making sure there's content every day to kind of drive people who are suffering from writer's block or whatever.
Yeah, I should probably post. I've posted once. I did a poll because I couldn't decide between a couple different projects, and the one that received the most votes was Pew Pew, my Star Wars game, and
that's going to be fun.
I decided to do a bounty hunter focus because I just watched Mandalorian yesterday, and I kind of wrote a whole bunch. It's going to be rules light, inspired by Grant Howitt, if you're familiar with Honey Heist. So, and I just bought a bunch of art from Jacob an hour ago for that. So,
cool. Congratulations, Jacob.
Yeah.
Speaking of Honey Heist, I just want to introduce what is currently my favourite Rolevember project in terms of wackiness is my mate Lewis, who has tried to do a game with me before, and then we are going to eventually do it. But it was the first idea of trying to do a game with someone else and go, it's not quite working for him at the moment, but he is producing a new game that's even simpler called 3 Goblins in a Trench Coat.
Oh, yeah. I've heard about that.
He's making a zine RPG, and I actually went, Basically had this hilarious conversation of, please tell me about these zines, because I keep seeing Kickstarters for them, and I'm like, I don't really know what they are. I was like, I know what one-page RPGs are, like Honey Heist and stuff, and I was just like, is that kind of like that? And yeah, so he's been kind of educating me on it, but the game is wonderful. You literally play 3 goblins stacked together pretending to be human. And
if you go to itch.io, there's a whole lot of those, and there's kind of a thriving community. They do game jams, which is similar to what you're doing with Rolevember. A bunch of people, vibe together for a whole period of time. A lot of these are like Honey Heist. If you read it, it's a page and a half of rules, an adventure generator. That's it. And that's most what Grant does. I don't know if there's a ton of money in that, but there seems to be an audience and a community. They're having fun, which
it's a good community building thing, which is a good idea. I mean, the games you can make really fast, and then do bigger things. I guess if you draw in people. So yeah.
I mean, when you're asking, is there money in that? Frequently, the question is, what is the plan to have money in that? Like, if you're doing a 1.5 page RPG, first of all, you can probably, if you're experienced and good and know what you're doing, you can probably make that in a day. So you're not necessarily having to make the kind of money that you make in a 600-page hardback full-color rule book, right? But secondly is the idea that I will give this away for free and I will get attention, and then when I do something bigger, people know my name, because that's a way to monetize things other than just I sell this unit. I think there are a lot of useful things that you can do to build a community that can help you make money in the long run, even if they're not something that's making money immediately.
Yeah.
I would agree. And there's a lot of cool stuff over on itch.io, and some people even cross-pollinate over DriveThruRPG. And I'm certainly a big fan of DriveThru, but it's kind of nice to have, there's a few options, like the free gaming store we mentioned earlier in the podcast, or, itch.io. So it's, competition is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, Walt Rebelliard has joined us. A wild Walt appears. Let's, hey, Walt, how you doing?
Boom.
Hey. All right, Walt, you remember Christine from It's a Plane?
Hello.
Hello.
And do you remember Owen Stevens from Everything?
How do you forget? we had an amazing conversation last time, and I said that I'm going to be moving next door to him because of how favorable the rates were over there.
It's stupidly cheap.
Indiana is very, very affordable. It's crazy. It's like going to Detroit without all the charm. Hey, I'm sharing an image that Jacob just shared on his Facebook. That Dwayne Johnson just posted on his Facebook.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's really excited about this. He's been looking forward to this role, and honestly, it's the perfect role for him, because in my home DC games, I've been casting Dwayne Johnson as Black Adam for years.
Do you do the voice?
Yes. I do the voice, I do the eyebrow, everything.
You can't say that and then not give us a taste.
I have to be in my GM head for that. I can't do that now. That's not something I can just turn on.
Now, what you should do, right, is you should film yourself side by side with like a clip of The Rock.
Oh God!
And then put it up, make it trend, and see if you can get him to show up to one of your games.
I would love that. I don't think that would happen.
Well, but you never know what will happen, right?
Yeah, someone got Dwayne Johnson to officiate their wedding a few years back.
And even if you didn't get him to show up at your game, you might get an invite to the premiere. So, I think it's worth doing. The thing about things trending and going viral is that no one has figured out how to make that happen. So in my opinion, in many cases, it's spaghetti, right? You throw spaghetti at the wall, you see what sticks, and whatever sticks, that's what's done. I don't recommend anyone actually do this with spaghetti, by the way. It's an analogy. But, with my YouTube videos, for example, my number one YouTube video has over 250,000 views. My number 2 video has like 10,000. Because one of those, and then next one down is like 3,000, and then most of them are a few hundred. Because the Rebel Lieutenant story went viral, and it went viral years after I released it, and it's still the thing that a lot of people, when I see someone has subscribed to you on YouTube, I can almost guarantee that they saw that video and thought, oh, is there more of this stuff? And it's my very best gaming story. So there's nothing that good, unfortunately. But there are people that get very excited. But I didn't make that video thinking this is the one that will reach 250,000 people. I just did it as one in a series of things, and it's the one that blew up.
Hey, is this a long story?
The Rebel Lieutenant? It's a few minutes.
Do you want to share it here, or is
Sure.
this okay?
No, I will happily share it here. So in 2000, I was working at Wizards of the Coast, and I was part of the Star Wars RPG R&D team. And because it was Star Wars, and there hadn't been a Star Wars RPG in a number of years, and we were after the Phantom Menace, but before Attack of the Clones, the company, Wizards of the Coast, decided to have a launch party for the Star Wars RPG. And Peter Mayhew was there, and Jake Lloyd was there, and Drew Stritzman was there. Some of the artists were there. And it was at a Planet Hollywood in Seattle. So they shut down the Planet Hollywood for the premiere. So they weren't doing any regular seating or restaurant stuff. And we were using Kenner Star Wars toys to run people through a short version of this game. And I had run several people through it, and we were doing, we were supposed to have a half an hour worth of content because we were only going to run people through 15 minutes, and we wanted to make sure we never ran out. And apparently, a very elderly British couple had shown up, and they were like, well, we just wanted to see Planet Hollywood. And they were told, well, you can only come in today if you play this game. And they were like, well, fine, we'll play this game. So these people who were in their 80s, maybe, sat at my table, a very thin, gaunt-looking man and his somewhat plumper wife, with 2 teen kids. And they're like, so what is this? And I will do my terrible British accent. I can't help it. It's how I tell this story. Can you explain the basic nature of this game? And we're like, well, so you all are facing an evil empire who have guys in armor called stormtroopers. Stormtroopers. So they're space Nazis. Yes, sir. They're space Nazis. That's exactly what they are. They're space Nazis, and you are playing members of the rebellion who are trying to carry out a mission against them. So we are the resistance. Yes, sir. You're the resistance. Absolutely. And so he immediately got into the game, and his wife referred to him as Lieutenant. And because that's written Lieutenant, I've always said Lieutenant when I tell this story, but clearly it was Lieutenant, although my memory is hazy. It was 20 years ago. And I began to realize as he directed these 2 teen kids through this mission that Lieutenant was maybe not just a nickname, that this guy might actually have fought Nazis. Because he was like, all right, we will gather around this point. This is going to be a commando raid. Boys, do you know the difference between a raid and an attack? And they're like, no. In a raid, the idea is merely to accomplish an objective, not to hold territory. So we must move forward, ever forward. And what is this? Well, sir, that's an E-Web repeating rifle. It's some sort of light artillery piece. Yes, it is. And what is this thing here? Well, that's a hover lift. A small lorry. Yes. Boys, take the E-Web heavy artillery, put it on the lorry. We shall push it down the hallway. Dear, you're in the auxiliary. Take these med packs. What's a med pack? Well, it's a medical kit that will heal people. Very well. If anyone's injured, dear, you use their med pack. We'll have you have all of them. Boys, move forward. And he just lockstep ran them through this encounter, and I couldn't keep up with them. He was like, we will put them in enfilading fire. Boys, do you know what enfilading fire is? No, sir. And they were just entirely in his thrall. And so in 15 minutes, he just tore through a half hour of content. Some of it was that they rolled well, which was nice, but a lot of it was that he knew how a raid worked, and he was getting people in crossfire, and he was like, we will shoot this one until he falls, because 1 dead opponent is better than 2 wounded, unless the objective was to make them worry about each other. However, in this case, it does not seem that they will take their wounded off the field. And at the end, I was like, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for playing. As it happens, we have about 2 minutes left, but you've gone through the entire adventure. It was a lot of fun playing you. Thank you very much. So when does this particular amusement come out? And I'm like, well, the box set will be out in a couple of months. I think perhaps we shall get a copy of this and see if any of the boys down at the center want to play. So I've always called that my Rebel Lieutenant story, and for years, I mean, given their age, I doubt they are still with us, but I very much had a happy vision for many years of a number of World War II British veterans sitting around the center, killing space Nazis. It is my very best gaming story. I was delighted to be there. It was a great day. Corey Herndon, who was also on the team next to me, was running Jake Lloyd through the scenario, and we had all been told, look, people are going to want to play Jedi, and some of them are going to want to turn to the dark side. And we had a spiel, right? Yes, the game handles turning to the dark side, but for purposes of playtest, we're not allowing that. But Jake Lloyd said, I turned to the dark side. And Corey Herndon said, all right, Mr. Lloyd, normally we're not allowing anyone to turn to the dark side for the playtest. But for you, we will make an exception. And so Jake Lloyd got to turn to the dark side and turn on everyone, which, perfectly appropriate. So there's a longer version of that story that I had more carefully thought in my head on my YouTube channel. But that's my best gaming story. And it was a really great day. And it really drove home to me both how some of the themes of Star Wars are, if not universal, easily understood by people who clearly aren't science fiction fans. I mean, they were there for the Bogart paraphernalia, right? Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah, there was a guy named Istametis on the YouTube channel who's saying, "Oh, it's a military officer guy. Since I first heard you tell the story the first time, I'll never forget it." Smiley face. Real-time interactions.
Mm-hmm. And that story was picked up on Reddit one day and made it to the front page. That's why so many people have seen it. And I suspect more people know me as the guy that tells the Star Wars military guy story than know me as an RPG designer.
It's an awfully good story. It makes me think there's a whole untapped audience of seniors.
Yeah.
I was thinking exactly the same. I was like, next time I go and visit my granddad, I'm like, right, okay. Let's dice out.
And, that was a very simplified version of the rules, so they could pick it up really, really quickly, and it was something for them to do.
Yeah. That's a vacation they probably didn't forget. So, well, cool. Well, hey,
I hope not.
Speaking of Star Wars, as you can see in the grid next to us, I have I've been posting this pic everywhere because I'm a cheesy motherfucker. Mandalorian.
Half man, half DeLorean, all fun.
Sorry. So who's seen this?
I have.
I have not yet, but that's okay.
British. We don't have it yet.
Yeah, not available yet.
As I understand it, it's going to be available in the UK in
March.
And Christine is a law-abiding citizen who hasn't seen it through unscrupulous means. So good.
I haven't actually, no. And I will continue to remain law-abiding till March. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll try not to go into specifics, but I loved it. And it very much occupied what Jon Favreau wanted of this series, which is to be a space Western. And it is so much a space Western. It is beautiful.
Yes.
And when the original Star Wars came out, a lot of movie analysts and critics pegged it as a space Western. In fact, I mean, when the first Star Wars movie came out, I was 7, and my mother described it as a space Western with a princess, which is 100% accurate, but also made me not want to see the movie. So I actually had to be hauled to Star Wars by my parents because I wanted to see the Godzilla movie that was out instead. And obviously, space Western with a princess, while an accurate description, sort of misses part of the excitement of that. But I think Western is very much one of the genres that can adapt to a lot of things. I mean, the Western, the samurai movie, to a certain extent, cyberpunk, those are all the same sorts of stories that have a fringe of society with some possibly shady experts trying to accomplish things. And almost any archetype that you can put in one of those, you can transplant to any of the others easily.
Yeah, I tend to think of Star Wars as heist movies because in my mind, all the best ones are. But that might be an oversimplification. But yeah, I saw The Mandalorian. I don't want to spoil it for Chris. I liked it. There are so many nods to other Star Wars stuff. It almost reminds me of fanfic. You know, you get the guy on your ship, you're bringing in for a bounty, and he makes a joke about Life Day. And then you're walking through the street bazaar, and there's some weird little creatures cooking on the spit. And, oh, that was a creature I saw in Return of the Jedi. And then there's so many nods like that. It reminds me of if you read fanfic sometimes and the writer really wants to make sure you know what universe you're in. There's like, oh, hey, here's this. Or in Rogue One, when you see two patrons from the cantina in Star Wars just happen to be walking on the same planet. There's a lot of that kind of, what's going on, don't you, kids?
Sure, but I mean, there's a difference to me about fanfic where you have to read the description and watching a visual medium where if they were going to have something roasting on the spit as part of the scene setting, having it be something that people that care about Easter eggs will notice is less disruptive than having to stop and say, and the creature that was on the spit was a Kowakian whatever monkey. I can't remember. I haven't had to write Star Wars in years. Like the one in the cantina or in Jabba the Hutt's palace, etc. So I think it's okay to have Easter eggs in the background of things. It does maybe make it a little harder for people who are really well-informed fans who don't want those little nods, but I honestly suspect that's a minority of the audience.
Yeah. I mean, I said it last time. I thought, it's Disney wants to monetize your nostalgia. That's why they spent $3 billion on Star Wars.
Sure.
And that's why you do something like this. And I like this more than I've liked most of the recent Star Wars movies, except for Rogue One. Walt, I know you have lots of thoughts. What do you think, sir?
So many thoughts, but I don't want to spoil anything yet. I really enjoy the meme that's going around, and you see this a lot of times when something comes out that's really popular and happens to eclipse other things. It's a man and his girlfriend walking, and there's a very beautiful woman walking, the other way, and he's like, "Hey, now," he's looking the wrong way because he should be looking at his girl. And they got a picture of Rey next, like holding just some random dude's hand. And there's a Mandalorian walking the other way, and it's like, what trilogy?
Exactly.
And I think that really sums it up because in these last three movies, like you said, Mike, the Star Wars is trying to tap that feel, and on a couple of different places. A lot of people have gone on record as of saying that this is what happens when you try to get a corporation to understand a passion, and they can't hit that mark because they don't understand what made it great in the first place. They're just trying to. Oh, go ahead, please.
Suggesting that Kathleen Kennedy does not know what made Star Wars great in the first place, in my opinion, is misunderstanding what made Star Wars great in the first place, right? These are the people who would have claimed that Return of the Jedi was ruined because Chewbacca gives a Tarzan scream, and went on and on and on about how Ewoks destroyed everything, and thought that the fact that The Empire Strike Back ended without a resolution ruined Star Wars forever. These are first of all, they're not movies designed for 49 and 50-year-olds to analyze point by point. Secondly, there's not a single thing in any of these movies that makes less sense than the stuff in the original trilogy. We just forgave the original trilogy, right? If you're watching and you say, well, if you can turn a hyper-capable starship into a torpedo, why didn't they do that with everything? You're missing the point that is an awesome flipping scene. It's spectacular and it's heroic. Because if you want to ask that question, then let's dial it back and say, why was Tarkin told that the Rebel base would be in range of the Death Star in X minutes? And what's in the way is a planet. Because what the Death Star does is blow up planets. We've seen how long it takes to charge that thing. It's not X number of minutes. And by the way, blowing up the planet that has the Rebel base around it will probably destroy the Rebel base. Just shoot twice. There's no need to wait. And if there's no need to wait, then the entire Rebel plan is stupid. And by the way, why does the Death Star have no railings, no safety systems? And isn't it awfully convenient that there's a tiny little port that a Starship torpedo can shoot, and there's one magic space farmer who can make this impossible shot? If those are your complaints, you're missing the point of watching Star Wars. And if those complaints would port to the original to begin with. There is nothing wrong with the most recent Star Wars movies, except that people have been waiting for them for decades, and we now have the internet that allows people to put up their number one complaints and share it loudly. These movies are extremely popular. They're making the kinds of numbers you cannot make if people aren't seeing them more than once. Do some people not like them? Sure. Do some people think that Empire isn't the best of all the movies? Sure. But that doesn't mean that they're right. You can nitpick anything. Kathleen Kennedy has been with the series a long time. The people that are making these movies are very excited about them. There's no way to be as new and innovative and good as something is the very first time. The first trilogy will always be the first trilogy, and there hadn't been anything like it until then. Plus, either you give Star Wars a pass for having space wizards and hyperspace and everything just being spectacularly convenient, or you don't. And if you do for the first 3 movies and you don't for anything after that, you're not applying an apples to apples comparison to these things. Turn off your brain, watch the pretty explosions, enjoy the lightsabers, and be moved by the fact that at the end of the movie, it is the story of the rebellion and noble heroics that has begun to inspire people again.
Right on.
And that has been my rant for the day.
That was a very well done rant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you think about the fan culture that has sprung up because of the internet does allow such a rampant knee-jerk reaction to just hit immediately?
I honestly think that has, in some cases, been weaponized by bad actors. I think exactly the same thing that allowed, and this is going to be political, folks, so if you don't want to hear politics, mute me now. The same thing that allows Russian fake news troll farms to manipulate public opinion also allows people who want to weaponize geek culture to create memes and stories and rile up the masses. For a long time, we've known that if one person stands around and yells long enough, he can frequently get a mob. That's the whole thing behind a mob is an ugly thing, right? A person is smart. People are, as a group, stupid. This is not news. The big lie was used thoroughly by the Germans in World War II. You say something that is a huge lie and people believe you because no one could possibly get away with saying that if it weren't true. But it turns out if you say anything and people hear you and you see you, there's a percentage of them that will believe you. None of this is shocking to sociologists. I think there are people, for example, who don't want diverse games, don't want diverse entertainment, don't want geekdom to begin to accept that marginalized groups need to not only be listened to, but represented. And one of the ways that they attack that is to look at anything that has marginalized groups being shown as heroic and saying, well, this is bad, and I'm not saying it's bad because it has a woman. I'm saying it's bad because objectively, no. Some people may think that, but they are being bolstered by bad actors who are specifically engaged in a culture war. And it ticks me off, since you asked what I think.
It's one of the things that I like about the ability of people to actually get their ideas out there. Now that, so you know, that obviously the toxic fan culture is very detrimental, and it really doesn't do anybody any good. But I think that the internet also provides a place where people who are like-minded can get together and share that experience in a positive way. Like, for example, you know, on your internet presence, especially on Facebook, you post a lot and show a lot of your work, and it brings people together and probably sparks some ideas on your side when people are saying, hey, that's cool. Did you ever think about doing this?
Absolutely. A good community is tremendously helpful and useful, I think, for everyone involved. I think the fans get a lot out of it. I think creators get a lot out of it. I think independent creators can strongly benefit from having an online community, right? There's this idea that if you have 10,000 fans or 1,000 fans who are really dedicated fans who will get most of your stuff, that's all you need to be a success, is the small core, right? I don't need 3 million people, 1% of America to buy my stuff. Obviously, that would be tremendous and great. I wouldn't complain, but that's not what I need to make a living as a creative. That is one of the reasons that I try to use my online presence not only to promote myself, but also to promote ideas I think are important. One of the reasons I talk about, I have various mental issues. I'm depressive. I'm socially awkward. I have various problems, and I want to be open about that online so that that dialogue is also out there. I want to let people know that I want diverse games, that it is important to me that people with different gender identities and people from different backgrounds and people of different ethnicities are making games, because otherwise I'm going to be playing Tolkien Heartbreakers forever. That doesn't mean that Lord of the Rings Heartbreakers aren't fun, but we've got a lot of them. And it doesn't mean that there can't be new good ones. It just means that there's a big diverse pool we can pull from, which benefits me because I like those games, and I think benefits the world because I do believe it is important for people to see themselves represented. I read that in Avengers Endgame, for people that haven't seen this, one of the things that happens is that Thor gets fat. Okay, there are a lot of people that see that as fat shaming and fat jokes, and I am sympathetic with that position. But at the end of that movie, when Thor becomes massively heroic again, the original script had him shedding all of his weight and going back to beautiful movie ripped Thor. And the actor, Hemsworth, said, no, if Thor is fat, then he's fat, and he should be at this moment heroic while still dumpy and overweight. And they did the great big awesome beard and the different armor. To me, that is an important element because I'm obese. I'm a person of size, and heroic representations of any kind of people of size are extremely rare, and frequently they get removed, right? If you look at Mycroft Holmes, classically is obese in the stories. You look at both Elementary and Sherlock, which I enjoy. Both of them introduced incredibly thin Mycroft Holmes with no reason for that character to be thin. There is nothing about what they were doing that required. Sometimes people say, well, you can't have an overweight character because they would get tired. They would slow down. But he's a genius. He sits and thinks, and what those characters do on those shows is sit and think. Amanda Waller has been represented as a overweight Black woman classically and as one of the big badasses of DC. And yet there was a reboot they tried where instead they were trying to turn her into a sleek super fox. That's not who that character is, and there's no reason that she needs to be. I don't have a problem with good-looking characters, but I think that representation is important, and I'm hammering on this one because, you know, I am a cis white hetero male. The only place where I really myself can directly speak to these things is mental issues and obesity, so it's why I'm hammering on them. But that experience has helped me see that this is true for a whole wide range of things. And I've now had the four of you staring at me rant for like 5 minutes, so I'm going to let you leap in. But I do strongly feel that you have to take these online communities and you have to fight to make them good places. It doesn't happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. Would you guys mind if I talked about a comic just real fast?
Please.
Go ahead. All right. This is an Image comic called Reaver. Justin Jordan, Rebecca Isaacs, Alex. I don't know how to say your last name, Alex. I'm sorry. Let's say Kumaras. I just found this randomly because it was $2 an issue on Comixology, and I'm getting tired of spending $3.99, $4.99 for comics. This is literally Dirty Dozen in a fantasy world.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's only 6 of them because they actually want to have everyone's names. And Dirty Dozen, there's a bunch of red shirts, but there's these 6 people in a castle, and the officer in charge comes to them and says, "Hey, we need you to infiltrate this fortress where there's a wizard who's fucking up our shit, and you guys are staging a prison revolt now, so you can escape." Like, what are you talking about? Here's some swords, go! They hand the cards, and it's been just a whole lot of fun. It's not often I find a comic that I really like and I want to push to people, but this is a great one. If you get a chance, I think you should check it out. And anybody have anything else we want to call out before we wrap things up?
Yes, in all the talk about diversity and representation, etc., I want to talk about She-Ra because the new She-Ra season is just utterly amazing.
Oh,
and
shit.
the thing, I have watched every season religiously, and I will admit it was one of those shows that I was told by my housemate to watch, and I will entirely admit I'm not really sure if this show is to me. I remember thinking that. No reason why. I just remember thinking. I remember sitting watching it. Going, this is amazing. It's incredible. It's just it's really exciting. And I am is it a plane, for example? I like to just put diversity in there, just in really subtle but obvious ways. For me, it's all about art. And this is why I love doing projects, Kickstarter projects, especially with backer image rewards, because in Is That Plane, one of my chapter covers, there is something submitted by one of my friends, and she has many disabilities and spends a lot of her life in a wheelchair. And so she actually went to a charity for the disabled and basically said, I have got a backer award. Can you please help me come up with a character? So basically created a character in a wheelchair with basically force field powers. And they were very specific of, we want to make sure that this character needs that wheelchair. Their powers do not trump the fact that they're in a wheelchair. And there is another superhero fighting a bad guy, but they're like right in the background, in the foreground. She specified, I want this person to be there, actually not actually saving people. So that's the kind of mentality I have. So there was really no reason when it came to She-Ra for me to think it wouldn't be for me. But I think it's just like remembering the original 80s cartoon and never really watched the original 80s cartoon. It just had that image in my head and going, I probably won't enjoy it. Just every season has me hooked. And season 4 in particular is so dark. There's like, I can't believe how dark it is. I mean, for something that is so immensely bright and colourful and has the reputation for being, I'm going to use gay because no, it's diverse. It's very representative and increases with it. For all that rep it has a really, really good job of really hitting you very solidly in your emotions, especially in that series. Like, there's so much conflict in it. Dear goodness. I was just like, and that's what I think is great about it. It's like really surprising, and it can manage to be, I think it's got the like appeal of that diversity, but at the same time, it's all about telling an amazingly good story with really good complex characters. One of the things I really like watching it on the diversity front was realizing that like Spinnerella was plus size, which I didn't realize before. And I think that's diversity right there for you. Like, it can be there, and people make a big fuss about these things, but I bet nobody spotted that. It took me like, hang on, she's been in several seasons, not a commonly featured character, but still has like an episode or two. And I just realized, and this is the fact of her and Natasha, who are like blatantly a couple, and just like doing that beautifully. And it's like, yeah, one of them, she's quite tall and thin, and the other's, she's got the bigger sort of curvy figure. I was like, yeah, there's lots of people like that. I mean, my frame's very different to my girlfriend's, and I'm like tall, and she's got more curves and stuff. And I was just sitting there going, I relate to this couple, and yet they're two women. So like, anybody who shouts about these things don't need to be there, we don't need these female characters, gay characters, they're idiots, because it doesn't actually make a difference, other than those people can sit down and go, that is me on the screen with cool superpowers. So I love those two levels of She-Ra. Also, I love the Dragon Prince for similar reasons. I'm really looking forward to the third season of that coming out, because again, that just sort of goes, we're being diverse. You haven't even probably noticed. Just like, here's two queens married. There we go. Cool. Badass queens. They're there. Don't make a thing about it. Carry on.
I am super excited for Dragon Prince.
Yeah, it's been a great show.
Oh, so good.
And one of the things you touched on, I think, is important. What we currently have here are 5 white guys talking about diversity, and that's who happens to be on this show, and that's fine. One of the things you touched on is that you had people with disabilities come up with these characters. So I think it is very important to note that you can't get as broad a set of diversity if you have one demographic trying to represent everyone. So it's important to support diverse creators to help get diverse games, right? I have not lived their lives. I cannot express what they actually feel, and I can't draw on their experience to tell new stories the way they can. So I think that's an important element that you touched on that I wanted to call out. Just saying we should make things diverse is one thing. One of the ways we need to make things diverse is to support diverse creators in creating diverse things.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should note that Walt is Sicilian.
It's true. And so half white.
Fair enough.
All good.
So, well, hey guys, this has been a great conversation. I have to get back to the soulless tasks assigned to me by my corporate paymasters. So, I just want to recommend Mandalorian, and please check out Owen's project. And the Reaver comic is great. She-Ra, which you see playing our window, is fantastic. And my final word on Mandalorian is Nick Nolte is an Ugnaught. But he's a cool Ugnaught. Anyway, hey, thanks.
He's an Ugnaught.
And there's that legendary Owen pun ability.
You should win the internet for that one today.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, hey, to all of our panelists, thanks for coming out. And to our viewers and listeners, we'll catch you next time on the Banff Podcast.
Bye, folks.
Years.
Farewell.